user, so you have to challenge them. So it's a matter of what you give to get in return. So
it's just we take it as tools for making decision.
yes,
This is the scoring system. So you can combine it with another tools to, for example, to lock an account, or how we use this risk engine practically.
the risk engine.
It basically depends on the policies. You can use it. You can define a policy and do whatever you do inside your company, and each company may have what.
So there is two requirements here. Me as a vendor, him, as a user, as a vendor. His risk engine will accept the policy from me. The policy is set by the business. So, for example, I gave you the example of the single sign-on. You try to go to Payflex for the money is, but you came in from Navigator. At the moment you go to Payflex and you want to access your HSA account, this is money. The policy says step up. So you go to the risk engine, what's the confidence I have in this is Abbie on the other side. If the confidence score is low, we will challenge you to step it up to the requirement of that application. So this is how it is used, you know. Okay, so.
Can I just compliment
Yeah.
about the privacy question? I would like to give the example in Accepto of geographic location. We do geographic location and we get the geographic location from the user, but the geographic location we store on the servers is not the geographic location that we got from the user. We store another geographic location so that if there's a discrepancy between locations, the system will know, but the location that is in the server is not the real one. Okay, so that's one example that we do to protect the information that we get from the users.
Okay.
I had the same question on the privacy still. Okay, people are worried about the privacy because they know what it is. They know incidents that that has happened in Rio based on the privacy. You were saying that you collect this information with intention to protect them, but we have realized that in most of cases, that binding, in most of cases, the people who collect this information, they use it out of that bracket. So my concern was, is there a way where the client can know what is happening on his data, even though you have collected it? It comes to the yesterday question: who monitors who?
So you go back to the contract between you and the customer for the purpose and the intent of using the data. From my end, I don't want to go through the problem of data privacy. That's not what this session is about. We use data to enhance the binding between you and your device for authentication purposes. This is the purpose of this use. It's of the data collection here, and that's about it. If we're gonna go about why it's used and how it's a contract. We don't sell the data to anybody. Actually, most of other CVS applications, for example, don't know it's you because all what they see is a score of a confidence score. So the data is used for that purposes. Let's move on.
Okay, I was going to comment, but I won't. Okay, we're going to jump to the FIDO 2 session. I will make sure we stay on track so we can get lunch. Abbie, the first few slides might be redundant, but I'll let you go through them. We can skip through them if you want. Because we start through passwords, basically.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
So the reason, like me and I'm giving like the introduction to Amy. The first session was supposed to talk about account takeover. Multi-factor authentication is not good enough. We need better solution. We're building a story of why FIDO came and how FIDO could be used properly. And I wanted to do the introduction here so Amy can show you what we're doing at CVS with actual real life use cases. So Amy and we have Sissa, we have our own team that design and work with the other people within CVS to define authentication flows that are modern authentication flows. And we cannot change our old behavior to a new behavior all of a sudden because there is legacy applications that need to stay. So it's not easy to just turn off a button and the old way is gone, the new way is on. We have to integrate it little by little because of the business cases, the life cycle of an application, when an application can upgrade or not. End of the day, you know, the problem is that our original systems worked on, they were password-based, password was gone. Was God, that's it. And this is how most of our older systems work. And then we have a problems with password that we already illustrated in the first session. You want to move to the next slide? Yeah, so this is statistics that are very scary in terms of what passwords are and the risk associated with them. The traditional problem that we, like the most serious problem that we have is account takeover with phishing sites. If you are phished, basically your account is taken over. That's the end of the story. So you have to be very careful. And the way our system works today, it's the burden on the end user not to click on the bad link. If you click, you are in deep trouble. And that's not fair for the end user or the end consumer. And FIDO, you know, will help to solve that or eliminate that trouble. Next, Amy. So we did talk about this already and how the issue is with MFA because it still does not prevent man-in-the-middle attack, and combined with database leak and malware, we got us a problem. So MFA is not the magic medicine that is needed to make authentication better. Actually, a lot of the regulations like HIPAA and like the PCI, they tell you use strong authentication, but in their own definition, strong authentication is a multi-factor authentication, which is wrong. So we from the FIDO Alliance, you know, we have to go to regulators and really keep knocking at the door. You are advising people insufficiently by saying multi-factor is a magic bullet. Multi-factor solves some problem, but not all problems. And you need to start advocating the use of FIDO. So this is one of the key messages that we want to show, you know, a part of the discussion that Rolf will give. And then the regulators have to catch up to where we are because they are still in the old school. Okay, next. So, you know, we already covered this. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so that's you now. Still me? Okay, so. So anyway, like we keep talking about FIDO. I don't know if you know the history about FIDO or not. FIDO started about 4.5 to 5 years ago. Or when did it start, Rolf?
So in the early beginning, it started in 2011. The first discussions, FIDO Alliance was launched, I think, officially in 2013, if I remember correctly. And so it's already a long journey. Yeah. 7 years more.
7 years. Yeah, and my first encounter with FIDO was when I was at Bank of America. Actually, I went to the bank and I tried very hard to convince the bank to be part of the founding members of FIDO, and it took some time. Eventually, the Bank of America became a FIDO member. This is where FIDO started initially as an internal circle of trust of early adopters. And little by little, they started expanding the alliance once they had enough core protocol to go public with. So the technology was tested on a small scale, and then it started going little by little higher up. And from day one, FIDO knew the success to the FIDO Alliance solution was usability. You can get the best authentication and strong authentication solution. If it is not usable, it's useless. So from day one, it had to work with anybody. You don't have to have any degree to use FIDO. So FIDO was designed to be transparent. So now FIDO is about 300 company member. You have the board of director, which CVS is on the board. We have about 50 board members. And we have the key players that are on the board. You have Microsoft, you have Google, you have Amazon, you have most of the US banks, you have CVS, you have NTT, you have Samsung, you have Huawei, you have everyone that deliver any component related to FIDO is on the board of FIDO. So, you know, if you look at the consumer electronics, we are covered end to end, you know. Every entity that's part of the food chain that deliver a system that's related to authentication or should be used by authentication is on the FIDO board. So it's a complete cycle or circle of developers, adapters, the whole ecosystem. It took a lot of effort to reach that maturity point, but we are there. Okay, most of the core technology of FIDO has been developed. We still have some improvement to do, but FIDO works with two assumptions. There should be a secure enclave, and that secure enclave is like a secure key. It's like that hold private keys. A private key is the key that is used to sign a local authentication, and you send an attestation to a server. So the server all of a sudden within FIDO type solution only become a directory of public keys. For every public key that you have, your relationship between you and the server is a key pair. Private key on your local device, a public key on the public server, which is on the FIDO server. The way the keys are derived, they are not part of you as a user. As a consumer, you're not aware this happened. It's done for you through agents and through automation. Okay, and now every device that's FIDO enabled, the way it works is there is a certificate that burned on the device at manufacturer time for scalability issue and other stuff. And correct me here, Ralph, if my numbers are wrong. So if you are a manufacturer, you can have a core certificate. You can issue it up to 50,000 devices. And after that, you have to burn a new certificate on the device.
Yeah, so that different options authenticator vendors can go for, right? There's still the authenticators which do not provide any attestation, right? Some of those exist in the market. And then there's a large set of authenticators which at registration time give you an attestation of the authenticator model. And that's typically where we say at least 100,000 of authenticators need to share that for privacy reasons, but it should not exceed a couple of million for security reasons. And you see that, for example, if you use Android devices or the Android platform authenticators provide you that attestation on Windows. You see that Microsoft with all TPM-backed Windows 10 machines will give you that attestation as well, where the older machines where the TPM cannot actually be used, typically meaning because it's not present or it's too old of a version of a TPM, right, will not give you the attestation. So in the end, the relying party gets, in most cases, a cryptographic proof and knows how and what kind of authenticator model it is and can look up more characteristics from the FIDO metadata service. Yes. So for example, whether it's a fingerprint-based authenticator backed by a TE or something else backed by a secure element. Right? So you have a proof, you know what's going on, other than just data you get from device fingerprinting, which anyone can forge relatively easily today. Right? This cannot be forged because it requires a secret for authentication, and that secret cannot be easily extracted from that device. That's pretty difficult, and how difficult it is really depends on the authenticator model.
Yeah, so thank you. So, and this is the key, you know, because now the binding, it's a function of the secure element on the device, and it's supposed to be secure by design. For those devices that do not have on the main infrastructure a secure element, FIDO offer the UTF or the CTAP now, which is basically you could have the secure element on a carry-on device. Okay, so you could do that through a FIDO key that you're portable. You have multiple vendors that offer those service. YubiKey is one vendor. It's in Sweden, actually. And now even Google have their own FIDO 2 enabled key. There is a soft version of it. It's on Android. You can have the equivalent of like your phone to be the soft extra element, where you could use it like to do communication. There is a communication. If the secure enclave is not on the machine, it's not on the infrastructure, there is a CTAP. It allows you to communicate through an external close by third element that will act like your secure enclave.
And maybe if I can add something to that, that's typically defined by the use case you want to address, right? If you are a bank, for example, you have consumers, right? We know that a very small number, roughly 3% of your consumers, will be willing to take a security key, an external roaming authenticator, even if you sponsor that. We know, on the other hand, that most consumers these days have a device in their hand which already contains a FIDO platform authenticator. Now, different from that, if you are in an employee environment, right? You're an enterprise, you have a couple of thousand employees, and you want to give them security keys just to be able to sign into their machines. Maybe that's what you can do, right? If it's offshore partners, right, or consultants, you typically will default to the platform authenticator, but mostly in the B2E space, the security keys are an option. There's still some consumers, right, the nerds, which might want to use it because it makes it easier to migrate from one machine to the other machine and all these, and bootstrap trust to new devices, those kind of things. But that really is a minority of the people in the end.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you, Rolf. And to be precise, like depending on the use case and the target customers, with our consumer base, like our group, we made the decision we're not going to use external authenticator because most of our consumers will not adopt that. It will be an extra burden. It's our decision. However, now our work is moving to workforce, which is internal. We could force them to use an authenticator because it's corporate policy. We require stronger authentication. We need the extra add-on. So for those that do sensitive work, you will need to use, like the YubiKey or either hard or soft. That really does not matter. But it's depends on the use case and what you're using the FIDO for. What I wanted to say from the beginning is it's flexible. It gives you the options to put the balance in the proper balance, like in that slide, and the protocol is not like limiting. So it's your use cases that will require you to do what you want to do. So again, another important part, biometric is used in FIDO. It's local on the machine. There is no biometric on a central server. Any local authentication that happens is local. So you pass the local authenticator, and once you pass the local authenticator, you get yes or no authentication passed, which means you, as a user of FIDO, you have to make sure you're enrolling the right person. Yeah, so this is part of the enrollment. And this is where Amy will come in her presentation. I'm not done yet? More? Oh my goodness. I think we just explained. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so a lot of time they ask me a question, and I'm glad Ralph is here. FIDO 2, why the 2 showed up? We made a mistake in the naming. Initially FIDO was the UAF and the U2F. The UAF is the Universal Authenticator Framework, and the U2F is Universal Second Factor Authenticator. And that was before I think Microsoft was part of the ecosystem. And once we wanted to go into the web browser, we needed to upgrade what the protocol does and the implementation of the protocol. So we had a lot of discussions. How can you ensure backward compatibility? How can you go into a new system where you combine the UAF, UTF into a browser-based type solution? And I don't want to muddy I think Ralph is the co-chair of the FIDO 2 working group, so he came up with the name. So Ralph, you can take it from the source.
Sure. So I would rather start not with a name, but with what it really is. So we started with FIDO mainly for native mobile apps, and that's where we have the support already, and it's ubiquitous across all the platforms. And then, as you said, the browser came up, and we said it would be great if you could do native FIDO authentication through all the web browsers. And from that point, it's a question, how can you convince browser vendors to support anything? Because everyone knows browser extensions that don't work, right? The plugins you can install in browsers, right? Those things are going away over time. So coming up with those solutions wouldn't scale. So we needed to convince the browser vendor community. And the only way to do is essentially to set up a working group in the W3C. That's what we did. And that's where we specified the JavaScript API and some other changes to the protocol to make sure it's easily implementable for browser vendors. And so for me, all that FIDO2 web authentication is the way to do FIDO through the web browser. And that's now there, or since whatever, early 2018, that's where the candidate recommendation came out. Early 2019 is where we reached recommendation status. And now, end of last year, Apple added support to Safari in the developer mode, and I think the recent updates, the Safari 13 supports that finally for all end users. So that's great. Now we have ubiquitous FIDO support even in the web browser. So whether you are using a native mobile app or a browser as a channel to your customer, you can use FIDO as a consistent user experience. And that's, for me, that's a great achievement.
And, you know, like a lot of websites, the way they operate, to know that you have been to a website, what they do, they put a cookie. Who doesn't know what the browser cookie is? So cookies are good, but browser cookies are not really very good because cookies are vulnerable. They could be stolen, they could be replayed. You have cookie poisoning. You can have third-party cookies, and in terms of privacy, the cookie is much more a threat to you than other things because the cookie can link you to other sites. You know, so you have it's a problematic, the cookie. So once we moved FIDO to the browser have access to a secure vault. This secure vault could be on the infrastructure like TPM on a Windows machine, okay? And if it is not, you use the CTAP protocol, so you have the secure enclave outside. So now you don't need to use cookies. Once someone visits your website, you could set the proper FIDO credential on that browser to know that you have seen that user, if the user accepts. You want to remember me, you could set up a cookie, a FIDO key on the browser. The next time someone log on to you and the browser support the FIDO protocol, you could query the browser and ask, give me all the credentials under my domain name that are on this browser. So the browser tell you, I have seen user 1, user 2, user 3. So you don't need to set a cookie anymore. So, you know, Rolf.
And maybe one addition to that, it's easier to understand if you think of the key being operated by an authenticator, right? We call that the FIDO authenticator that has access to the key, and the browser just facilitates communication to the authenticator. It's either on the platform itself or it's a roaming authenticator, meaning something you can carry around and plug into a different platform, right? But the browser doesn't know your key. The browser can't disclose your key. It's maintained in the authenticator, and that's for a good reason.
Yeah, so it's like when you go to the bank and you have access to a safety deposit box. You get the key between you and the bank, and you go to the safety deposit box. So
yes, but you can't access the contents of the deposit box, right? This is where the analogy is a little different. Yeah. You can't take it out. You can just tell the authenticator, use it. Right?
Yes. So, but the validation happen is it's the relying party can have access to that box. Having access to the box means the box was set by the relying party. So there is a binding type operation. Else, do I have more slides?
This is your last one.
How am I doing on time?
Yeah.
I'm good? Yeah. Okay. So it's yours now?
Have like an hour or so.
That's okay. We will have Q&A. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So moving on with the speaker. So my job at CVS is to help implement the wonderful ideas that Abbie comes up with. So I work a lot with our IT teams to help implement FIDO, soon to be FIDO 2, once we get that rolling. So what I'm going to walk through today are use cases. The first one is FIDO, which is in production. We have a handful of apps, especially our flagship apps and our important apps that are using FIDO. I think almost everybody is on FIDO now. We might have a couple lingering that are in current implementation for FIDO on mobile apps. And then for the FIDO 2 for the web, we have a POC, which I'll be demoing today, that we've been playing with and trying to understand WebAuthn and FIDO 2. And a lot of it comes from trying to understand from a user perspective, the usability. So security is great, but if it's not usable, it's not going to work out very well. So that's a lot of what we're trying to work through with FIDO 2 and WebAuthn. So I'll go through these use cases here. So I'll just walk through what the use case will be, and then I'll demo it. I did videos because we all know live demos don't always work very well. So this first use case, typical, user downloads the app from the App Store, enters in their username and password. At that point, you prompt them, do you want to enroll in an authenticator? They select yes, and then all future logins will use that FIDO authenticator. So you guys probably see this today on many of your mobile apps. So shouldn't be anything new, but this is using FIDO. It's easier if I pull up the actual, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. It's easier to play the demo rather than in the embedded link.
For those people that think why Aetna, they talk CVS, CVS bought Aetna. So we all work for CVS.
Yeah, so Aetna still is a health insurance company, and then CVS is the pharmaceutical aspect of it. So CVS bought Aetna. We're all confused with identity here, whether we're CVS or Aetna. So this is the Aetna application that we'll go through here, if it works. There we go. We're rolling. So this particular application, we do leave it up to the app teams how they want to do their flow and implement. Some do just biometrics only. Some want a backup PIN. This specific application chose to do a primary authenticator with a backup PIN. So again, typical registration flow. Do you want to log in using Face ID and or PIN? If they do have fingerprint, not Face ID, it would be fingerprint. But this particular one is Face ID, this phone. So user would hit what they want their primary login to be. In this case, choosing Face ID since that's easiest. Hit continue. And then backup PIN, for some reason Face ID or fingerprint would fail. This app wanted to make sure that the backup PIN was available for a user.
Uses facial recognition.
Yep, from your phone, just like you do. Yeah. You might have fingerprint. Yeah. So that's Face ID if you're on Apple. And that's it. You're in. So any subsequent logins, you pull up the app, no longer user ID and password, just Face ID or backup PIN. So that's typical FIDO use case.
So this is NGA1?
This is NGA1.
So this is our first attempt to go FIDO, and we were newbies, and we solved the authentication problem because we were using FIDO, but we had a nightmare with the rest of affiliates adopting this technology. Because we made the fundamental design flow in our APIs, we set the authentication screens like what their older app is.
It is, and I mean this particular app, that they were actually the ones that went first. I don't know that they had the expertise for it. Go ahead.
Sorry, before we go ahead, I just want to ask one question. From a business perspective, let's say the business users, how do I explain to them the reason as to why we are putting in the PIN? Well, from the back end, it's easy to understand that this is not crossing over to the server, it's remaining on the device. But for a business person, how do I explain to them the relevance or the move between a password to a PIN in case they're not going to use the facial recognition?
Yeah, so very good question. We could do the best technology on earth. If the business does not buy in, you're dead on arrival. I was lucky because when I joined Aetna, the business had the problem. The problem was password reset. We sell insurance, health insurance. So you enroll in November. I mean, Paul knows, like November, October, you enroll. And if you're not sick, you don't care, you know, that the next November, and we love you like that because we make most of our money off you. The next time you come in is next November, you know, we have not seen you, you have not seen us. You use the password to come to log on to me. The first thing you do is what? Password reset, you forgot it. Okay? And we had a lot of cost. Every time we do a password reset, it costs us money. And also, we don't know if there is an account takeover or not. It's a nightmare. So it was not convenient. If you're coming from a mobile device, also the access from mobile using password is really bad. A lot of the applications that say, you know, you could use your Face ID or Touch ID, they don't actually do FIDO. What they do, they do with the OAuth layer. They store a refresh token on your app that's long-term. Some of them, they do it 3 years, which is totally insecure. So this is another nightmare we need to address. It's like the layering with other. You know, so Ralph is laughing. You know.
So one addition to that, there is an interesting difference between, right? Typically people ask me, for the user it looks the same, right? Whether I'm using Touch ID, which caches a password or caches an OAuth token, right? Compared to FIDO, the user experience looks the same. But the difference is one more factor in the authentication, right? Caching an OAuth token is a single factor authentication. Yeah. Doing FIDO is a two-factor authentication. So you can do much better with the same simple user experience. And this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest observations and surprises when using FIDO, that the user experience is so much more convenient than the single factor authentication you have today, even though it provides you a very strong two-factor authentication, which is phishing resistant and resistant against a lot of other scalable attacks. So you can really change to a more consistent user experience as opposed to doing this thing now, right, and something else the other day, and which ends up with very confused users which don't know what you are going to ask them next, because they have experienced so many different flows on your system depending on where they are, how they are traveling, and all those kind of patterns. It's much better to go and move to a consistent user experience, train them. It's so convenient that at least our customers tell us users do not even count the authentication as a step anymore. Right? The act where they put the finger on the fingerprint sensor or present their face, that's not even counted as a single step anymore.
Yeah, and one more thing that I throw in, which is like I can run a much deeper, you know, hopefully next time. If you go at the OAuth layer, okay, the way we're doing it with FIDO, with the FIDO authenticator, it relieved the OAuth layer of having to manage a refresh token on top of the regular access token for the OAuth protocol. Actually, we don't even store a refresh token anymore. Our RBA engine killed the refresh token, which means back, I don't have to have a list of refresh token is valid, invalid. So the response time for OAuth authentication for the rest of the company has gone up dramatically because we do not cache. We don't care. I have simplified the whole OAuth layer by saying, forget it. Every time you authenticate, there is an RBA token. This is the risk-based authentication token. And if the token is fine, I pass authentication. I don't need the refresh. Also, I just keep it. I keep the access is the refresh happen by providing access, as opposed to look, have access expired or not because you are caching a password on the device. And then after that, you have to refresh it. So it's much faster and much more secure. And we get benefits by saving the company money. So this is part of the business. So you can have the best solution on earth, but the business needs to see the money benefit. When you go back, say, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, and on top of that, look at your OAuth layer. I'm saving you $2 million a year because you don't need to keep track of all this junk anymore. You know, they are happy. So this is part of the acceptance internally.
Yeah, and I think that, well, to help answer your question, I mean, you have to sell security to your business. A lot of app teams come to us and why do we have to implement FIDO? We could implement Face ID or Touch ID without FIDO. And so in addition to what we are doing with FIDO, the risk engine, we feed that in as well. So we're gathering that information as well to be able to incorporate that into a risk engine. So it's not, you know, it is FIDO, but it's FIDO plus for at least CVS. So
I have a question for you. So how often did you get a positive signal from FIDO, whereas the risk signal was, the other signal was it's invalid, meaning, right, how often did you really need it to look at the risk-based system in order to prevent attacks effectively?
I think zero. That's, am I right? Zero.
Thank you. Which is in line. Which is in line with the experience of our customers today as well, right?
Zero.
So just using FIDO alone protects you against those attacks, and you reduce the reliance on all the other stuff dramatically.
So it's true. So I say that for mobile, but we use it mainly for web, right? So we know your mobile device. We may have seen you in California. I'm going to use the States because that's where I'm from. An hour later, you're suddenly on the East Coast logging in from web. Something's fishy about that. It could be a relative doing it and they have legitimate reason, but we feed that in. So we're not necessarily using the risk score, you know, for a mobile, you know, back to that, but we're using it as a full picture of the user and what they're doing. Okay, ready to move on? All right. So the next use cases really go into FIDO2 and WebAuthn. So like we said, mobile, FIDO is great for mobile. So what do we do from a web perspective? How do we protect the users? So in this situation, you have your mobile, you go to the website, cvs.com and .com for us, whatever it is, you go to the actual web, you pull up Chrome, Safari, Edge, whatever it is, and you enroll in a FIDO2 authenticator at that point. So then all future setups from that website, from that phone, essentially will be using that authenticator. So as was mentioned earlier, Safari is not listed on here because it's not yet supported. So Apple does not yet support WebAuthn, but they are getting there, right? At least on the mobile device, I should say mobile, right?
So what Apple has added is support for roaming authenticators to Safari, even on the mobile device, right? On iOS, you can use it with the latest update of iOS now, but they have not added support for the platform authenticator.
That's what it is, platform. Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. All right, so let's go through this other use case. Once I get it up. All right.
Can I ask you a very dumb question? Extremely dumb. So I use, one of the browsers that you showed on the previous screen, and I'm doing a transaction, and the window pops up, and it says, do you want to have your credentials saved for the next time? why would I say yes? I mean, or is that what say, or is that the information that's going to the FIDO server? So I mean, so why would anybody say yes if we're trying to educate the customers to limit their fingerprint or footprint, etc.?
Yeah, so it's a binding. So at least from our end, we do browser fingerprinting. This is for browsers that are legacy. Like, let's say you don't have a FIDO enabled browser. Okay, so how can I know it is you? A lot of times you could set a cookie, so you get the question from the people, remember me or not, or we use cookies. Actually, the way it is cookie, you have no choice, accept or not accept. So they set the cookie on the browser. From our end, when they say remember me, at least the way CVS does it, it means you're giving me permission to save a browser fingerprint of your browser and tie it to your risk score. So next time you come back to me, if the IP matches, the browser fingerprint gives me so many things about you. It's about 256 parameters. I know your machine type of CPU, the date the CPU was done, the local motherboard number. I know the software version of Microsoft. There is a big header. I know the browser version, the fonts on your machine. I know what size screen you're running. I mean, if you look on what information I get from the browser, people will actually cry. The browser gives you're naked, you have no clothes. That's it. So when I say, remember me, and you say, okay, it means you're giving me permission to know your machine. So next time you come back to me, if with the risk engine, this is no FIDO. If I match all the coordinates and I have seen you before, I don't challenge you. I don't send you an SMS. Okay? Your relationship with me is easier because I am sure I've seen you before and you are the one. Now, the way we're evolving, we say, remember me, there is an option with FIDO that does resident key and other stuff, whether you log on or not. When you hit the click, it means I will write the FIDO credential on the browser. Okay, so the browser will hold a FIDO to enabled credential that tie you. So it's say Paul at nga.cvs.com, and it go into the secure vault on the browser. So next time you come back to log on to me, that first thing I will query the browser. Is it FIDO2 browser? Yes. I ask the browser, give me all the credentials under cvs.com. So the browser will send me a list. I have Paul, I have user 2, I have user 3. So next I say, are you Paul? If you hit Paul and you are yes, I don't even need to ask you for username or password anymore. That's it, you're in. I have seen you before. So this is one part of the use. Rolf, you can add more.
So I want to get back to your question, right? It was, why would I as a user say yes to using FIDO now as opposed to doing whatever I had to do before? What most of our customers have done is they ask the user whether they want a more convenient user experience, right? Do you want to stop using or not having the need to enter your password in the future, right? That's typically how they phrase it, right? Do you want to use the device to authenticate you to have a more convenient user experience? And we know from statistics that the users are, especially the ones which very often forget their passwords, are the ones which are willing to adopt first, right? It's a very quick adoption we have seen, right? You can get in a couple of months to more than 50% adoption across your user base just by doing this thing as a simple nudging, right? Asking the question, do you want that more convenient stuff in the future? Most people will say, yes, actually, I want that because that was the reason I bought that device, right? Because now I can use my fingerprint as opposed to entering the password, or I can use my facial recognition as opposed to entering the password, right? We know from existing users, they want that. They are happy to use that. And the password heavy or password reset heavy users are the ones which do it first. So we know, phrase a question in the right way, users will say yes. The observation here is, people do not ask, do you want more security? And that's typically for a reason, because more security now means less security today, right? And that's nothing any business would like to publicly state. Right? Even though it will improve the security, you are not putting that in the face of the customer. This is under the hood. Right? You're putting the convenience first because that's the main thing the user will notice.
Yeah. So, yes.
That's very good. In fact, phrasing the question. In fact, I could also see a trade-off where if you say, do you want more security now, just like you said, then maybe in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what's the trade-off with privacy? So that's another trade-off that I'm having in the back of my. I know that's not the topic here, but that's something that.
Sure, and maybe a quick answer to that, right? There's two trade-offs people are typically concerned about, right? Because we learned those patterns. It's either it's convenient or it's secure, right? This security versus convenience trade-off. The second one is privacy or security trade-off, which we heard today as well, right? It's either secure so I can collect a lot of data of you, right? Or it's privacy preserving, meaning I can't collect so you're less secure. With FIDO, we can argue that we can improve the security and the convenience and the privacy at the same time, right? It's really getting you out of that trade-off thing in a lot of cases, right? Because the privacy is enhanced. With using FIDO, there's no need for FIDO at least to store any data of the server other than the public key, right? Which is not privacy infringing by any means, right? It's in line with all the regulations, and we will get to that a little later today. Right? The second is the security is improved because we can and do protect you against all the phishing attacks and all the other scalable attacks. And number three is convenience is improved because now it's just a finger swipe or present your face as opposed to entering a long and complex password and to change it and keep it updated and remember separate passwords for different sites.
So like part of it is sorry, I mean, you have to be clear and upfront with your customers. No fine print. Fine print is bad. If you're doing something right, you should not have fine print. You should have your privacy policy crystal clear in a link that say go click on it. It's in big letter. Anybody can read it. And that's part of what we want to aim forward. There is no hidden stuff here. It has to be clear. Go ahead.
That's fine. Okay, so this particular use case was the web browser on a mobile device. So we'll hit play. I will still caveat this is a POC. What Rolf said, we would probably present a better user experience to say, you want a more convenient. So here we go. Open up the web browser, logging in with username and password. And again, here's where we would probably present, different options to the user. So here is just we're binding the device here with FIDO2. So we'll hit add. These particular options for the mobile device, we have push to mobile, the FIDO2 external, which is the YubiKey that was mentioned. And then the platform identifier is what's built into your phone. So in this case, it was fingerprint on an Android device here. And then the FIDO2 credential gets registered for the web browser on the phone. And then subsequent login here, if I would just hit login next time I come, again, just being asked for the fingerprint, and that's it, I'm in.
See how convenient it is? You enrolled in FIDO2. At the same time, you have put your username and password. And we asked you, do you want to be in FIDO2? You said, yes, enroll. We clicked it. Next time you came in, all what you had to do, like if you have a fingerprint on your machine, so your PC now is like your mobile phone. There is no difference, okay? Like, I don't know if you paid attention to that or not. You came in, you logged onto my website by putting your fingerprint on your laptop. If your laptop has a Face ID, it will be, if not, you can put the pin. And the pin could be 4-digit pin. And it's much more secure than your password, even if it is 500 character password.
So how you
you secure the fingerprint image or file with the
It
private key?
depends on the platform. This is the whole issue. Here, when you're using your iPhone and you put your fingerprint, me as an app developer, I'm relying on Apple, Secure Enclave, the whole iOS protect that part. So
we trust Apple.
yes, and this is a Windows enabled platform or Mac that support FIDO. This is why we moved the stuff to W3C. Once the browser comes on a platform and the platform will support FIDO natively, the browser will talk to the platform. And this is part of Microsoft or Apple. Or Android. They have to support the FIDO 2 enabled auth-n that become native operations. So it buffers the complexity of doing FIDO from the user and the complexity of doing FIDO or implementing FIDO from the developer. So the developer is just talking, if you're doing a web development and you work with the browser, that's all what you do. You call an API or a service from the browser and life goes on. Browser will handle it for you. It's buffered.
So one addition to that, so people might think now we are relying on that Apple platform or on the Android platform. Correct, but you're already doing it, right? If you enter a password on an Android device and that Android device would be malicious, right, it would be the man in the middle, right? We are not changing that equation. It's the other way around, right? It makes that dependency on the platform, at least on the authenticator, very obvious, and it tells you exactly what authenticator model it is, right? Those things are not transparent to you today, right? You have to guess that somehow and rely on other technologies to somehow get to that conclusion, which can be easily spoofed, right? With FIDO, it's very clear. You get a strong assertion what kind of authenticator model it is, and you have also the knowledge about how securely that authenticator is implemented, right? Even if you root your Android device, right, the authenticator is still the secure part of it, right, unaffected.
They use API.
Oh, not on. So Google has an Android API. Rolf's going to correct me here if I'm wrong. And then the browsers, it's just a JavaScript API, right? Is it?
Sorry, just to add, Amy, I wanted to find out, you mean for that, you remember the step where you're showing us that now I'm enrolling the fingerprint, and when I'm logging in using my fingerprint, is it browser agnostic? Does it mean that if I enroll in Chrome, the next time on the same device I want to log in using, let's say, Safari or another browser, I don't have to log in again? Is that what you're saying?
So that is already the case on most devices with platform authenticator. Meaning, if you have an Android device, you're using different browsers, it is the case. If you are using a Windows machine, you're using Chrome, Firefox, Edge browser, right, or Brave, or all the others. That's already the case, right? So all these browsers are using the same native operating system API to talk to the authenticator. And so it's the authenticator holding the credential and not the browser, which is great because now you can change the browser and users can update or change browsers as they want and they do not lose their credentials. Plus, there's even one more example or advantage, which we have not talked about. If you register the credentials through the browser, you can use it through the mobile app afterwards and the other way around, right? So you can do nice use cases and there is, let's say, simplified app SDKs which allow you to do those things very easily.
64 applications we have, 64 applications. If you want to have a relationship between you and CVS, you have up to 64 apps to download. If you design NGA smartly, you only have one authenticator. So what does this, if NGA is its own domain name and you go set a FIDO credential on the browser, you're doing it as the authentication engine of CVS that other applications will tap on. So what FIDO enable, and a lot of FIDO people I talk to, they don't get that yet, because it's FIDO will do a single sign-on across apps for you. Okay, this is so powerful, you know, and so you could do it, and a lot of people say, okay, if you're gonna do it single sign, not all apps will have the same authentication assurance level. That's fine because you can step up. But if you do it right, it means your customer, instead of enrolling 64 times with CVS, they only enroll once. Because you can pick it back on the FIDO credential, and this is part of the roadmap of what Amy will be delivering. We're testing this in progress, you know.
Ralph, did you want to say something?
Yes. So regarding the step up, right? So typically there's no need for step up, right? The convenience is at the same level as for the simplest authentication experience today. It just gives the user control, but it's secure enough to support the highest level, right? So you can keep a consistent user experience, and they just put their finger there. And for them, it's the most convenient experience they can really have, right? With still having control about it.
Okay.
We will need step up, but I'm not gonna.
Okay. So like Ralph mentioned, you could share credentials. So this next use case, I've been on the website on my phone. I suddenly discover, hey, there's an app in Google Play or the App Store. I can go ahead and download that app and use it. Now I've already authenticated from the website on my phone, so why can't I just use it? So this is a use case where it ties that web, that domain, that website to the app because we've linked them together, and it'll allow you to log in with the same credential that you've already set up. So jumping out of here.
That save money. Part of selling security, you're selling a lot of less development for applications.
So here, mobile app. It's a very basic mobile app. I'll keep mentioning it's POC. So again, user. Now, had I not been on this device yet, I could register the FIDO2 authenticator. Since I have, I'm just going to select sign in here, authorize, and you'll see a success message because I've already enrolled on that device. And that's it. It'll ask for my authenticator that I already enrolled in, and I'm in. So that's it.
So maybe one comment, right? You might have noticed we are bootstrapping a two-factor authenticator with a single factor or 1.5 factors or whatever, right, of authentication of the user before, right? You might see that might be the weakest link in the chain, right? If you are one of the businesses which have already a two-factor solution in place, like SMS OTP as a second factor or hardware OTP token or whatever, right? In that case, you might want to ask the user after entering the username and the password, registering FIDO authenticator, to just do the legacy second factor as well, just to make sure you are strongly bootstrapping a strong two-factor authenticator, right, with properly two factors.
That was true when I was with Aetna, because Aetna, since we sell you health, Aetna needs to always know it is Paul. It's not maybe Paul, it has to be Paul, because you're accessing health information. When we became part of CVS, our requirement switched 180 degrees. CVS retail, for example, they don't care if you really poll or not, as long as you're gonna make a purchase. It's like the Amazon model. So it's the same authentication engine. Now my customer changed. So a lot of our customers, they don't want to enroll. They don't want a guest account. Guest account is like basket and then check. Or a guest account, it means there is a pharmacy order. Is my order ready or not? They refuse to enroll because enroll require identity vetting, a password. It's a nightmare. So we're using now the FIDO to be one. If you do identity vetting through third party like the MNO and other stuff, you match the phone number on the device with the identity data on a prescription on the FIDO authenticator. I can start working with FIDO as a side benefit of upgrading from a guest account to a full-blown account with no additional work. I just agree, because I have. This is why the risk-based still come back into the equation, because I know it is you now based on your previous interactions. So if you want to go from a guest account to a full account, just click here, I'll create an account for you. And then if you're coming back to me from the same FIDO credential, you don't have to re-enroll. I just upgrade that FIDO scope to the proper scope, okay? So internally, I can do that. And this is a lot of the benefits of also FIDO 2. There is no restriction how to use it in terms of a business model. Our business model changed, but our core technology still was smart enough to support our new requirements.
Sorry, one more question, Amy. On your previous use case, all right. Your previous use case, you showed that if the user has already been registered via the browser, they don't have to register again for the application. So my question is, at that point when they log on to the application and they try the register button, will it automatically pick up the registrations that were previously enrolled during the browser registration?
I might defer that to Rolf. Our particular POC does not, but Rolf, is that possible that it would pick up that the device was already registered?
So this is where, let's say, some of the different implementations of different devices come into play, right? So if you have a FIDO vendor, ask them, they will have a solution, and if it's the right one. If they don't, go to another one.
There you go. Okay. Use case 4, we only have 1 or 2 more, so we're good on time. So this one is I'm done on the phone. I now go to the website and I enroll from the browser from the website. So it's very similar to the mobile web view that we just saw, but it's on your desktop, your laptop. In this particular use case, it's built-in authenticator. So I did this from the Mac, which I use my built-in biometric that I do to log into my laptop. So, coordination of videos here. Okay. Again, this is website from my laptop from Chrome. Again, username and password. Like I mentioned before, the user experience we expect to be different. It would be more of a prompting. Do you want a better experience? But this is just showing how the technology kind of worked of linking them. So I'll go through push to mobile, which is the first one. But the external, like I mentioned, is a YubiKey. I'm just using the Touch ID from my computer, logging in. And you can see my mobile device is already registered there as the authenticator. So again, subsequent logins, go to the website. I'm prompted just for my Touch ID. It goes quickly. I think I did it again just because it was it goes by quickly, which is a good thing for users that it's so quick. So again, logging in, prompted with the Touch ID that I've already set up on my Mac. That's how I get in, and I'm in. So that's the web flow essentially for the desktop web. Next one I want to hit resident keys, which is something that Abbie mentioned earlier, but I'll pause to see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, resident keys. Something we've been playing with the resident keys here, but essentially, how do you support a username-less login? So we've talked about passwordless logins, but how do you support username-less logins for, I don't want to type my username every time. So enter resident keys or resident credentials, as I think they've been called. But essentially, it's a client-side ID that gets stored on the authenticator on the device, whether it's the YubiKey or your local platform. And so in this particular use case, you'll see user one opens up the browser, they go ahead and register. All future logins will use that authenticator. Let's say another user comes and they log in as well, and then any subsequent logins, they set up their FIDO2 authenticator, they're good. So now you have two users that are using the same PC. And so here is a resident key demo, which I will go through here. It's helpful if you see it in action. So if I just hit login here, let me pause it. So you can see that the users that were already authenticated on this device get popped up for the user to select who they are. And we had a bug, so ignore the fact that there's two user ones. But essentially, so I was on a Windows PC, and if you have Windows 10 and above, essentially you can set up a PIN to log into your computer. You guys might have it already, but essentially it uses your local authenticator. So that's just an example of what a resident key is, or a resident credential.
See how powerful this one is? You agree to put
The browser becomes the spot, the single point of failure then. If we
Why isn't Ralph up here? I just want to add that.
So there is already a dependency on the browser, right? If the browser doesn't display what your JavaScript HTML page wants the browser to display, you are toast already, right? What the browser does not control is the keys, right? Because those keys, the FIDO credentials, the FIDO credentials are still part of the authenticator, right? Whether the mobile app uses that or the browser uses that, or on Windows, whether one browser or the other browser uses that, no browser knows the key. No browser can disclose your key, right? It's just the key is protected by the authenticator, and the browser can say, I'm talking to website x.com or y.com, right? And now let's use x.com's key or use y.com's keys, right? The browser can tell the system that. So that dependency on the browser still remains and will always remain, right? If you use a browser for rendering content, right, the browser must be rendering the right content, otherwise you are somehow toast, right? You rely on that, and that's the reliance in the case of session authentication, right? If you authenticate a browser session. Now, if you would use transaction confirmation, which is also part of the specification, in that case, you could say, do you really want to transfer $1,200 to account 12345, right? You could do those things, and in that case, not even the browser could interfere with that, right? So there are some caveats with that, because browsers at this stage do not yet support transaction confirmation, but we will move to that, and it will just take some time. now at least we have first operating systems providing you the transaction confirmation by the operating system itself. So it's great, and we can move that and reduce the reliance on the, let's say, weak parts of the platform and move it to the stronger parts of the platform.
Ralph, one question for you. Suppose the browser is rogue.
Fun?
The browser is rogue. So I can write my own browser and...
Sure, you can write your own browser, and that browser might not display the correct web page, right? It might always tell the relying party the browser fingerprint of a legitimate browser, and it's still doing the wrong thing. That dependency will always remain if you do session authentication. If you would do transaction confirmation, right, at least for that transaction, the browser would be out of the loop, which is a major advantage if you go to the very high security requirements things. But today, the real issue in reality is not the rogue browser. It's more JavaScript injection attacks, right?
Indeed, yes.
But even more fundamental problems are phishing attacks and server-side credential stealing attacks, right? We are protecting against those. The browser dependency for session authentication will always remain, right? It's there by nature.
Yeah. So I don't, that's very clear and in total agreement. Okay.
I only had one more demo, which is not FIDO, or FIDO 2 for that matter. But what do you do when you have users? So we have broad range of users that might not have a FIDO or FIDO 2 enabled device, basically. So how can we still provide a FIDO 2? So how do we still provide a passwordless experience for these users that might not have it? So in that particular case, we have push to mobile. So you guys might already experience, but basically you're on a website. If you have the actual app on your mobile device, you could say, do you want to approve via your mobile? So it sends a notification to your mobile, pops up, you say, yep, this is me. You can add an authenticator, yep, Touch ID, still me, and it'll sign you into the website. So same concept, but we're trying to make sure we reach a broad range of customers that might not have, everything that we need for FIDO 2. So I can show that video real quick. We have not implemented it yet. Actually, one of my vendors did this video, not me. So let me pull that up real quick. Okay. So this just shows the interaction. On the right is the actual app. So you do have to have the app installed with an SDK that would link to that that web SDK as well. So in this particular this particular use case on the phone, he's just showing that you're going to authenticate on the phone and set up your authenticators on the phone. That's one of our vendors. Say hi.
He knows
if it wasn't obvious before, Ralph. So that's just showing, okay, I now have the app set up. Now if I'm on the website, on the left side here, I hit continue, I grab my phone, you see the pop-up come up. Do you want to approve it? You say okay. Whatever authenticator you set up. In this case, I think it was Touch ID, and he failed, so he has to do it again. So once he's in, then he's into the website, and you can see he got logged in automatically. So this is a use case we want to offer to our consumers. We'd have a hierarchy. Okay, if you have a FIDO 2 enabled device, that would be kind of the priority, and so we'd go through those. And then if they did not have one that was capable, we'd essentially flow the push to mobile use case. So I'm out of use cases. We have time if there are questions.
What's hitting us hard now in terms of requirements from the business is Alexa and Siri. So
what the solution for that?
Actually, I have a non-HIPAA compliant solution, but if it is HIPAA compliant, we got us a problem. And to be honest with you, a lot of what Amazon say about HIPAA compliance, they are not really HIPAA compliant type solutions. They don't pass the real HIPAA. The question is when you go into like home care and you got an elderly or someone in like those homes for seniors, and they want to have access to their service, and they're going to say, Alexa, give me my drug prescription for today. Now, at the moment, to say, Alexa, give me drug prescription, guess what? This is health information. I have to comply with HIPAA right away. So if I'm using FIDO the whole time and no passwordless, Alexa does some voice identification, is not really voice authentication. So the use case to us, how can I go ahead without someone ability to have access to a phone to be able to do a FIDO authentication basically and give them access to their account through Alexa, okay? And what?
US directive for private data in the US?
HIPAA. HIPAA is a health insurance protection. I don't remember the other PA. But basically, anytime it put regulations in terms of what you need to comply with, anytime you share health information. So you have to protect your PHI, personal health information. It's like the PII. So there is a strict requirement on what kind of authentication you need to do, which is like the equivalent of what you do with NIST AAL2. And Alexa on its own does not do that. Because why it does not do that? Alexa does not know if it is me talking or I have a recorder saying Alexa. I mean, if you record my voice and you say, Alexa, give me, Alexa doesn't know. Alexa identify it's that voice. Alexa is smart enough to know that you're asking Aetna to give you the PHI, but Alexa cannot say it is me. So, and this is where I think our job is not done. I don't know how we to solve this properly. Alexa offered the opportunity of saying a PIN on top of the other one. So Alexa solution, when they say it's HIPAA compliant, they say, Alexa, ask Aetna to give me my profile. Alexa say, what's your PIN? So you say the PIN, but replay attack still. You can record the PIN if you recorded the request, and it's very easy. If you have an elderly person that they are 80, 90 years old and sick, they don't know if you're recording them or not. So you can take over their account in no time. So this is part of the innovation part that we're doing. There is a lot of study how to make the user more convenient, but also how to make authentication stronger, where I can have a HIPAA compliant Alexa based type solution. But other also use cases, you go to a hospital and they want to track your heartbeat, your blood pressure, all those monitors. So those monitors and IoT devices should be attached to you as part of your authentication profile, right? And then when you check out, the same device will be attached to some other patient. So you need to, you go home, that same assignment have to work. The device have to merge into as a policy, as an authentication. It has to join the Wi-Fi on your home network. How can you ensure that? How can you ensure all the data is also connected to the same user and protected with? So we have a lot of issues like this so we're looking, part of the solution we're looking is using blockchain, DLT, basically, decentralized identity. That's why we have interest in, credentialing and verifiable credential to look at the way to enhance the authentication experience. So NGA, the way we're doing it within our group, this is only one aspect of it. This is the FIDO stream. But we have a very strong stream going on decentralization, because we want to play a bigger role, at least within the US, to be a promoter of the Health ID global. One identity across any provider. We can share information between you, your doctor, your dentist. You go from one state to the other, your data can follow you in a proper manner. So it requires a proper decentralized identity ecosystem. And we're working with some other company called IDEMIA. I don't know if you heard of it or not, have you heard who? If you have not heard of what IDEMIA does, they are working on the mobile driving license. So a mobile driving license, you can issue it from the state, it will go into your phone, and it's not a picture copy of your driving license. It's an actual application that you can query, and it can be anchored as a real driving license. So if you're gonna go buy liquor, that application will show that you're over 18. It does not show your address, because that use case does not, you choose what attributes you share. Okay, and it has an API, and the way it works, it can be part of a wallet and in a system where you can query on that driving license that's authentic. It can be verified from the DMV that it is issued, so it's bounded. Okay, so we're working with them.
Abbie, since you're talking too much, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Based on your personal experience, and you've had amazing experience and expertise in this area, in your previous life, I'm not going to mention the name,
Yeah.
you were at a bank,
Yeah.
right? I didn't like that bank, but you work at a bank. Then you went to work for Aetna, which is large insurance company, medical data, just like you said, a lot of medical information that hospitals have to share, especially when you move from state to state. The medical company gets acquired by a pharmaceutical company, a CVS. So I think, do they also own Caremark?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a customer of you. So, okay. So now it's a pharmaceutical company, but you're still doing, this whole thing. My question, based on your experience from moving from the banking sector to the medical sector to the pharmaceutical sector, does it matter what's behind the interface? Does the data behind, does that matter? Whether it's a financial data or you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. You still have to protect the end identity data and your business type. Does not really matter. No. What matters is the way the organization operate and put the tools to protect what the data is. For example, when I was at Bank of America, the bank was adamant on protecting your identity and your financial data because it's a reputational loss. But they were not intimate on playing any role in facilitating your identity as a user in the ecosystem. Because the business model of the bank was, I'm the bank, okay? You work with me. Aetna and CVS have a different objective because it's not only CVS, it's a relationship between pharmaceutical, health network, clinics. We have intrinsic, like telemedicine. We want to provide services for you, and services require us to share your identity in a trusted way in an ecosystem that generates money for us, but also service and convenience for you. Plus, also it saves money. So the back end that we work as and the mentality is build it where you could have one account for life. Your relationship with us is across every business is the same. One ID so we can identify you. We know we have seen you before because you changed from insurance 1 to insurance 2, and then you came back to us. We don't want to forget you. So our business model from CVS is much more, it's from the get-go, how can we manipulate the identity data to be part of an ecosystem? The bank did not want that. They wanted to protect you and make sure application level authentication and interaction is there to minimize the loss for the bank. They didn't want someone to take over your account, and if they did, the maximum loss to the bank was $1,000, not more. So the focus is not the same.
Okay, so I have a follow-on because to me it does matter, and this is the reason I go back to Mr. Coelho's circle,
Yeah.
And the score, the one of the circles. So I'll give you an example going back to your bank. So I was a customer of your bank, and my wife and I have the same credit card. Every time I came to Geneva, and she's in Washington, D.C., after my first transaction in Geneva, my credit card used to get blocked. Okay? I have another credit card from a competitor. Same situation, never got blocked. So I figured that the risk score that was set by your bank was probably high to say, well, how could this person be both in Washington and in Geneva at the same time? So we have to block the account. And it happened every time I came here. So I think what I understand what you're saying, but it also goes back to the risk score evaluation that probably Aetna does differently than.
Yes, we do. And back to your comment on Bank of America, you'll be.
I never said that.
No, I know. When I was with my previous bank, Bank of America, actually, you should blame me on that rule, because out of the fraud that the bank used to get, 80% of the fraud was the credit card was used in a foreign country. It was a very well-known problem. The card is used in DC and at the same time is used in Geneva, and what we wanted to do is just block right away. And even if you have had a previous example, I think, like now they changed it where up to 3 months it will remember, but after that it will go back to forget. But it was part of, we had a lot of discussions, and the use case I gave the example of, I got to Geneva all the time, and someone, like my wife has the same copy of my card. Now it's my daughter, the example, because she does have the same, account. So, what to do, but it is problematic. This is on the defense of the data, but the bank in general, they did not want their data to be a conduit to enable interaction and businesses with others. But this has changed. Actually, like when I left, with Liz Futa from the bank, she started thinking, how can we as banks compete with other entities to be part of the sole bootstrapping of identity, especially with the emergence of decentralized identity. So now the bank is not the sole identity provider, but it is an identity attribute facilitator. Can have a trust in your identity. So a lot of the bank now, like the last couple of years, I still have very close friends at the bank. They are moving into, well, we need to be part of a chain and ecosystem. We work with another bank, a competitor of Bank of America, where we do the identity vetting, because now the bank is seeing that we can, instead that old KBA stuff that's static, everybody steal, a relationship is worth more, because I can start and initiate an identity vetting and enrollment through. So we work with, I don't want to mention the name of the bank, but it's bigger than Bank of America. We work with them. They do help us do the identity vetting, because I don't want that, the ideology stuff. I don't want anymore the LexisNexis, the Experian. This is all old school. So they're changing into that. And I think when I did talk yesterday that we are doing the DID Alliance, that you want anchor of trust for decentralized identity is like core trust for the .com, the .whatever domains in DNS, and this is what the new alliance is coming to do. Okay, a lot of the founding members are actually banks, because they know now in the new era with the FIDO authentication type as a core technology, you can move to be an attribute validator at least.
And maybe one addition. So you might have heard about the PSD2 regulation in Europe, which forces at least the European banks to think about a collaborative model much quicker than other countries are. Banks of other countries are forced to do that. And I think we will get to that in the next session to look into that regulation a bit, what it means and how you can use FIDO to address all the requirements or a lot of those requirements, especially for strong authentication.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for identity. And, for those that follow the technology really closely, we heard this story 10 years ago from Kim Cameron. information card. Who heard about information card? Did you hear about it? Information card was in Windows Vista, right? Vista or 7? Vista. And it was the same concept of a wallet, and you get your identity in the wallet. But the problem was Microsoft was to be the trustee. Now, it did not work. Anytime Microsoft say, trust me, the technology does not work. Now, once you get a DLT or a block, PKI is trust in PKI, it does work because it's not under the control of one company. It's under the control of a trust framework. And this is where we're going. I think we're going to have a lot of like circles of trust, like per industry. The pharmaceuticals will have their own, the healthcare their own, the banking their own. You have a lower class trust like the social media, but we are going into circles of trust that can boost your identity within a circle.
Nope, I just want to comment. We have 5 minutes left, so
we're
are there
not
any other questions? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to ask how FIDO will work with a community which does not have these modern phones with fingerprints and facial recognition, or there's modern gadgets.
Yeah, that's tougher, but yeah, I have no next session maybe after lunch.
Maybe in Europe it's fine, but in Africa they are a very small scale of people using the modern gadgets.
Yeah.
So there are. So maybe let's take it to the next session. I would like to understand what gadgets they are and tell you what options there might be, right? FIDO is an open specifications. It's open to all device vendors, right? Regardless of whether it's a smartphone or a KaiOS kind of smart feature phone, right? We are open to talk to all the vendors. And if you could help us, sometimes, especially with KaiOS, sometimes it's difficult to convince them about the value. It's much easier if a local company would help us and endorse that and say, right, we are in that country, we know you have a good market share in that country, and by the way, we need better authentication, and let's talk to those guys, FIDO Alliance, and see what we can do to get those people on board with even more devices supporting that specification. Right, there's a lot of options on the table. Let's discuss that and see what we can do in your specific case.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, George.